The Newmarket Hotel, what did they do, gay history walkers? They were men, they took off their hats and placed them on their We'd like to think it was sort of a blokey symbol of solidarity, don't we, with their comrade who was being unjustly tried for sodomy. It's quite a lovely story. Just after that, when they got up to Victoria Square, the Treasury building, the Labour Premier Hill didn't come down to meet them. There was some problem with the police. The blood flowed in the street. The Premier backed the police and said that they were a mob of communist propagandists and troublemakers. All right, but interestingly, at the next election, Mr. Hill was thrown out of office and Labour didn't regain power for another 32 years. So that's just a little salutary reminder, everyone, of the power of the people. The other story, a very important one to tell here, is a woman's story, everyone. Of course, the big V, vital statistics. Yes! And it's another anniversary. It's the 21st anniversary of the foundation of Vital Statistics, which was the first and still the only full-time women's theatre company in Australia. Isn't that wonderful? And it was founded by three fabulous lesbians, of course. Our own Margie Fisher, who founded the Feast Festival, her partner Roxy Bent, and Ollie Black. Now, someone said to me that Ollie might be in the audience. Look, thank you, Ollie. How gorgeous to see you, darling. And look, everyone. Ollie, come out here, darling. Ollie's in the theatre, you don't mind, you don't. Ollie is the original semaphore dyke, everyone. Ollie founded the lesbian suburb of Semaphore. Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that lovely? Thank you, Ollie. So we're here to remember and celebrate the founding of Vital Statistics by those three fabulous lesbians. And of course, in their productions, particularly from 84 to 96, almost all their plays had a lesbian character, and some of them were completely lesbian themed. And that tradition was also continued by the second director, another lesbian, Catherine Fitzgerald. And the current artistic director, Maud Davey, was in Burlesque, which is one of the programs featured in Fringe. And I believe that Vice was... Sorry, darling? Feast. Oh! Migration Museum. What? Feast. Feast. Thank you. You know, Vital Statistics have been involved in every feast. There have always been play readings and some productions. So they've had this marvellous ongoing association with Feast Festival over the last 8 years. And of course, they've nurtured a lot of women writers and women's works, which has been so very important. And of course, they've also developed a loyal general audience following. So it's not, and it was, the whole idea, wasn't it, Ollie, to have a broad appeal. It wasn't just for lesbians or women. Certainly there may be women's themes, but it was for a general audience, and they have developed a very wide following, and have travelled, of course, toured to rural centres and to interstate capitals. So it is a wonderful story, and we're here today to celebrate the first and only full-time women's theatre company in Australia, founded by three fabulous lesbians. Mr. Purcell is interrupting again. He tells me, yes, and I know, the exhibition's still going?
No, it's finished.
Oh, it's finished. There was an exhibition celebrating the 21st anniversary of Vital Statistics at the Community Art Theatre gallery round in Commercial Road. But that's lovely, that was celebrated. Thank you very much. Now, I've come over all spiritual. I suddenly feel the spirit moving. Come on, I'm going to take you somewhere. Follow me. Because there is a little bit of road traffic here, so we might have a bit of competition as well. Just to give that lovely nautical term, any sport in the store, isn't it? Now, here we are at stop number 8, in the shadow of St Paul's, and when we did the walk last time, we did meet over there, but I've been chatting to the rector, and she may well come out and greet us. The rector's a she. Not only is she a she, everyone, she's a lesbian. Oh, no. Yes, how times have changed. Isn't that right? Using a scarf. Quite naked. Yes, so the lovely Ali Wern is the rector here at St Paul's and also St Bede's Semaphore. And as she says, because it's really important that queer people do have a spiritual haven for those who require it. So, of course, all queer people in the West are very welcome at her churches. And she has got a secret weapon, she tells me. Father Ali or Mother Ali, I don't know, has got a secret weapon. And it's Libby O'Donovan. Oh. Yes. Often comes and performs at her services. So, yes, so there's an incentive. Can't hear. Oh, sorry, James, you might... Yes. I was talking a little bit more softly too because I didn't want to upset the wedding crowd, you know.
Why don't you have bottles on?
Yeah, that's a good idea, Jan. Oh dear. Yes. So look, a couple of stories here at St Paul's. All right. It's another celebration as well, because it's the 100th anniversary of this church. I think it's the 4th on the site. Okay. And so this particular building, 1905, 2005, and when it was known as St Paul on the Pile. Isn't that appropriate, everyone? St Paul on the Pile, because you remember this was just a marshy mangrove swamp and was often covered with water. And there is actually a story of people coming to the church, to the first St Paul's, dry shod. They had the service, and when they went to leave, a tidal wave had swept up, and they were marooned in the church. And they had to ring, or they wouldn't have rung. They got on their mobiles, and they called the harbour master, who was Captain Lipson, everyone. Remember Lipson Street? Another connection. And the harbour master had to send boats out to rescue the parishioners and take them away. So that's a lovely story, isn't it? The other story I want to tell you here, very appropriately, is a women's story, and it's a story about women passing as men. And this was not uncommon in the 19th century, for women to actually live and work and pass as men. It probably was associated with the hard economic times. Perhaps it was easier to be a man. But it's also obviously got to do with desire, hasn't it, everyone? Very obviously. Some of these women who passed as men married, because they were men, passing as men, they actually married women. And so there's a lovely story from that very reputable paper, The Truth. The Truth of 1925. And it's got quite a biblical headline. Oh man, where is thy victory, woman who wooed a woman? And it's a story of William Hunter Bailey, set here in the port, and he lived and worked here on the wharves of Port Adelaide. So Alana, a wharfy story. A wharf worker here at the wharves, and he lived and worked for 20 years, but in fact, Bill was a woman. And it was only discovered in 1923, after 20 years, in this deception when he got rheumatic fever, went to the doctor, and Bill was exposed as a woman. At the time, he was engaged to one of the prettiest girls in Port Adelaide. People were quite aghast because it reported that Bill worked as capably as any man, he could tell the best jokes, and he talked about flappers in the approved man style, and talked about flirtation and lovemaking with women. It was said he was the best of cussers and was the most eloquent of swearers. And apparently he was well known for taking girls to the movies, where he was known to squeeze their hands with great ardour. That was Bill. Anyway, he was exposed, but there's quite a nice end to the story. Apparently, hospitalised at Royal Adelaide, he gave them the slip. He disappeared, and it was reported by The Truth in 1925 that he was still practising his deception as a miner in Western Australia. So I think obviously Bill was very inventive. It was just a lovely story. Oh man, where is thy victory? Woman who wooed a woman. For 20 years. The other thing I would just say in terms of Lana was asking about wharfies and missions to seamen, you know, they would mix with seamen and frequent, say, missions to seamen, and you might have noticed there's a new seamen's headquarters just up the road that we passed, which is now headquartered where missions to seamen now meet. But Bill, when he was living and working as a man, liked to frequent the missions to seamen around there in Todd Street where we started, where he did like to, you know, have a yarn and read a book and mix with the other seamen. So isn't that gorgeous? All right, everyone. Well, I think that's enough. We probably haven't got time to go in. And did Father Ali come out? No.
She's got a wedding.
On wedding still, she's probably busy. Look, Jay, if you see Father Ali, Susie, just tell her we're just going down to the old rectory, to Dale Street. If she wants to come down. If she's free, let's go to our penultimate stop, shall we, everyone? We're on schedule. How's that? Oh, it doesn't matter, does it? Can everyone see? I was just going to move everyone back a bit. Oh, no, it's too high. Oh, it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? What are my knickers?
I can see you're not traditionally
Oh, but they're Right, gay history walkers, how are we going? All right. Penultimate stop. Can you still hear me all right? Can you see me all right? Oh, gorgeous. Okay. Our penultimate stop here in Dale Street, and of course you'll notice there's some quite fine buildings. There's some awful modern ones, but as we go along, some rather lovely older buildings. One over here, and in fact that was the original rectory of St Paul on the Pile. The rectory is now over in Semaphore, associated with St Bees, but this was originally a rectory of St Paul, so that's another connection. Isn't that nice? And we're here also to celebrate a 21st anniversary, the 21st anniversary of Dale Street Women's Health Centre, which I think is really important. The Women's Health Centre movement, an inspiration, I suppose, of that reformist eras of the fabulous Gough Whitlam. Does everyone remember Gough? Yes. Of course, just recently it was the anniversary of the dismissal, wasn't it? On the first walk, it was only 2 days later, I wore my Shame Fraser shame badge. I'm still got it. But I thought a few weeks on it'd look a bit silly today. But, you know, goth and that early movement of establishing health centres and women's health centres. And of course the very first one was in Leichhardt, which of course is also known as Dykehart, because lesbian women were very involved in that early movement. And I think it's important that we remember and acknowledge that. And in fact, the very first one, Women's Health Centre here in South Australia, was 1976 at Mary Street at Hindmarsh. And my manager, Will, tells me that some radical lesbians came to him. He was an accountant in those days, and asked him to help to set up the books for the first Women's Health Centre. Isn't that lovely, everyone? And then, of course, Mary Street operated until 83, and then one was established in the south, in the north, and here in 1984, in this lovely old house, which had been the Anglican rectory, the Dale Street Women's Health Centre. It's really important, I think, in terms of women's health, because the idea of treating a person as a whole person, holistic treatment. You know, you're not just an arm or a leg or a part of a body, you know, that quite alienating culture. We know what medicos can be like, and I'm sure we've got some in the audience today, but I won't point them out. Male medicos. So it's really important for women to empower themselves and take charge of their own health. And there were female doctors at the women's health centres, and there were marvellous things, you know, like bulk billing. Do you remember bulk billing, everyone? They do that, and you have a nice long session with the doctor and look at your whole health in a holistic way. These centres, and I believe Dale Street still, it has moved across the road now and combined with the community health centre, but you know, they were worked on very collectivist lines. They had management committees, so involvement of the community in the running of your own health centre. Those things were very important. Almost the way you do things was almost as important as what you did. Isn't that lovely, darlings? I love too, one of the objectives of the early women's health centres, do you know what it was? Ollie, do you know what it was, darling? To smash patriarchy by Christmas. You know the old saying, World War I will be over by Christmas. Smash patriarchy by Christmas. I think that was a joke. It's a lovely joke, isn't it?
Gertrude, why don't you make you thought to have a message from Ali?
Oh, a message from Ali, everyone.
A present for you.
Oh, right.
And she's terribly sick. She said, why don't you just walk past the wedding and come on in, she said. So she sends her love, but she's got a quick communion.
Oh, now she's got a quick communion, everyone.
And of course, getting away from Ali is quite difficult because
she likes to talk.
She's a great
well, look, that's lovely. So there's a special message from Ali. Thank you, everyone. Yes. So the other thing I'd just say that the women's health centres, you know, the environment was important too, and so they chose places like old houses, which were comfortable and homely. You could come in and have a cup of tea. They weren't clinical, you know. Weren't alienating like some surgeries are. So that was all really important, and that's why a structure of buildings such as this was chosen. Of course, now we're all worried about health and safety and all those important things, and so a building like this sadly can't be used anymore. So there's a bit of sadness in that, I think, don't you? So I think that's important that we remember that movement and Women's Health Centre movement, okay? Thank you. Now we're going along to our last stop, everyone. I've got a great surprise. Are we here? Well, we had to finish somewhere, didn't we? And we didn't want to just sort of leave you stranded in the middle of Port Adelaide. So when we finish, you do just have to walk back down Commercial Street. But as you know, on other history walks, we've tended to take in an institution or two, and we've looked at different religious organisations' attitudes towards homosexuality and queer people. So when we saw this lovely building, we thought, oh, the masons. Of course, let's do the masons. And it's quite a fine structure. It's a lovely sort of deco building and quite imposing. So it's another reason to appreciate another quite interesting building in the city of Port Adelaide. So the Masons, when you think about the Masons, I don't know what images come to mind. An all-male society with secret rituals, secret men's business. They're not allowed to share with anyone else. Perhaps even anti-woman and anti-gay, possibly. I don't know. What's been interesting in my research is that, in fact, there are branches of the Christian church, particularly the Roman Catholics, who can't be Masons, and the Christian right, who don't like the Masons at all. And you know how they have organizations of ex-homosexuals for Jesus? They actually have groups, the Christian right, of ex-Masons for Jesus. Yes. And they describe them, the ex-Masons, as being so much under spiritual bondage, which I find very interesting, that they are dysfunctional Christians. That's what the Christian right say. And you should be wary of any church leaders who are former Masons. Yes, also, and that any Mason should be examined very carefully for church leadership. So I think there are a few parallels here, don't you, with the Christian right's attitude to homosexuality and queer folk and the Freemasons. In fact, there's some quite scurrilous rumours on some of their websites. A prominent Grand Master, you know, in the 19th century is depicted as a notorious sodomite by these Christian groups. And they talk about some of the forebears, the Knights Templar, having homosexual orgies and urinating on crucifixes. This is the sort of stuff that they put about on Masons on their website. So perhaps we have got more of a affinity, you might say.
We do.
We do. Look, could I just say, it's a bit of a long bow, isn't it? But I did just look in this age of terror, everyone. I'm bringing everything in now. It's a really let's talk about the age of terror, shall we? The war on terror in which we're engaged, when we're almost encouraged to be suspicious of anyone that's different values, different ideas, funny clothing, you know, that sort of thing. Instead of building bridges and looking at what we share and what we have in common, our common humanity, let's look at divisions, let's look at separation, let's be suspicious. So I just thought, let's look at the values of the Freemasons, shall we? Will we do that for a minute, darling,
Yes.
just in conclusion? This is what they seek: ways to share in building a better community, show tolerance and respect for the opinions of others, and behave with kindness and understanding, to practice charity, and to strive for truth and high moral standards. Well, that's probably the only one I have difficulty with. I might part with the Masons on that one, I think, Gay History Walkers. But apart from that, I think there's probably some, in this time of terror, some rather good values, don't you? So I think that might be enough for the Masons, except we've got an important announcement.
Yes, we do, yes.
Now, you know how it has been an all-male province for men only, with rituals that go right back to the Middle Ages, because that's the origin of the stonemasons working on medieval castles and cathedrals and passing on that tradition. Well, I've been approached, everyone, by the South Australian chapter to form a women's group, everyone. And do you know what I'm going to call them? The Masonettes. Isn't that exciting? And you heard it here first today on the 9th John Lee Memorial Annual History. Isn't that gorgeous? So women, come and join me at the Masonings.
Perfect timing from Dr. Glossop, who's brought us safe and sound back to dry land once again. But what a journey aboard the SS Gertrude we've had today. And I'm sure it's one you'll never forget. After a few drinks, I don't know whether I'm going to get this next bit out there. And one that has given you many magical maritime moments to remember. So would you please thank our captain, Dr. Gertrude Glossop, once again for her navigational skill.
Thank you, everyone. The last word, of course, from me. I'm not going to let Mr. Purcell have the last word, am I? So thank you, everyone. You've been a marvellous audience. And of course, I could never do this without the ongoing collaboration with, even though he was a bit vociferous today and I'm going to have to speak to him.
You can spank me if you like.
Spank him. So do thank the lovely Mr. Purcell AM. Well, everyone, you're free to make your way back to the car, wherever it is, or your transport, or walk back to Adelaide, or whatever. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, darling. Beautifully received.
Thank you.
That's great.
Fabulous as always.
I'll be darling.